So I want to speak about conflict transformation. I really like the term conflict transformation, more than conflict resolution or conflict management or conflict prevention. It's a term that was pinned by Jean-Paul Lederach in the 80s, meaning that a conflict is something that is actually never resolved. It can be transformed and move to the next level, but as the situation itself, and that's key that I'm talking about situation rather than conflict, because the way we define conflict is as something that would be bad, a crisis, something we need to fight, avoid. But actually conflict is something that is very natural. Conflict is a situation that is waiting to be resolved, transformed, transmuted. And when we speak about conflict transformation, we speak about situation that bring opposing view and or opposing needs or opposing interest, and that we want to transform into a situation where everybody's happy. And the way we do it is actually identifying what is in the situation that is key element for the transformation. What needs to shift in order for this situation that is currently in transition to be harmonious? How would everybody feel if all their needs are met, if all their interests are addressed? And conflict transformation offers this possibility where we can enter this crisis, we can enter this conflict, we enter this situation with the trust that what we're going through is going to bring us to a level that is higher from where we are, and where we are addressing things that were not expressed. And these things might be needs, might be interest, might be various of issue. Because very often the root causes of conflict are around things that weren't expressed or needs that weren't resolved or received, and lack of resources or perception that there's not enough, a lack or scarcity mentality. And when we sit together and communicate through conflict, move through this conflict, move through this crisis, it brings us a large amount of opportunity. And I really love the word opportunity. In Chinese, for instance, conflict or crisis is Wei Ji. Wei is danger and Ji is opportunity. That's the only word I know in Chinese because I really like it. And for me, it captures what conflict transformation is we are feeling in danger, and yet there is a huge opportunity for transformation for each individual and for the wholesome. So how do we move through this conflict, or how do we move through any situation that requires our attention? Is first identifying what is our perception on what is not going right or what is wrong. And once we identify it, we identify then where does it come from? What's the root cause of that conflict? Each of these terms that I'm currently using, whether it's definition, root causes of conflict, conflict transformation, the distinction between conflict prevention and conflict resolution and conflict management, will be a separate part in a separate model where we'll go deeper in here. Right now, I just want you to see an overview of conflict transformation allow us the possibility to move ourselves into a place of harmony, from a place of disharmony, into a place of peace, from a place of perceived conflict. And the way we go about it is in variety of approaches and ways of being. Some people are very comfortable with conflict. I'm very comfortable with conflict. I'm actually more comfortable in conflict than in peace. And some people are conflict avoider, because they're not comfortable with conflict, and when they see conflict, they run away the other side. So imagine a person that is comfortable with conflict like me, meet an avoider of conflict, and I would be running after them to deal with the conflict, and that person is like, there's actually no conflict. So how do we deal with that? And that would be another separate model of how do we identify which approaches we have? And there's 5 styles for conflict. There's confrontation, like we have an issue, let's deal with it. Collaboration, we have an issue, how can we find a solution together? That's what we would call win-win. We have a situation and I don't want to talk about it, that's the avoider I just gave an example of. Or we have a situation and we accommodate, the accommodation. So that's an approach where, yeah, it bothers me, but it's okay. And I'm fine. And then we have the fifth one is compromise. And it's like, I'm not happy, you're not happy. Well, at least both of us are not happy. You know, there's certain comfort in the fact that none of us is going to get what they want. And maybe each one of us is going to get what they want, but they're going to get a little bit, you know. Versus collaboration, which really imagine that we're all going to be happy. And there's a variety of resources that discusses these different approaches. These were defined by Thomas and Kilman in the 70s, actually, by a quiz that we will make available that help you define which is the approach that you're most comfortable with. And the two elements that define these 5 approaches is actually the issue that is at stake and the relationship that I have with that person that I have an issue with. So basically when we have a situation or what we would qualify as a problem or a crisis or a conflict, what happens very often is that we consider the other person as the problem. So what we in the field of conflict transformation is, how can we move from you are the problem to we both have a problem, and let's sit and discuss how we both can find a solution that would make both of us happy. So that's the collaboration I'm talking about. When my issue or what is at stake and my relationship with you is as important, and so I want to collaborate. If the issue is not important and my relationship with you is not important, so let's imagine a person I meet in the bus that attacked me, I'm not going to go and start a process with that person. I'm going to say, oh, whatever, avoid, unless there's something stirring inside of me that need to be expressed, and then I would use this situation to jump on the occasion and create a whole conflict with that person, but it would have nothing to do with that person. So I would typically avoid a conflict. So that would be the person that would say, no, there's no problem. No, it's okay. And yet you feel how not okay the situation is, but you cannot address it because that person is an avoider. And so a very good exercise I use is actually putting a chair in the middle, and we're going to be practicing this. We'll put a chair that would represent conflict. Okay, this chair is conflict, is a situation that is bringing up upset, triggers, crisis. And depending on where you find yourself in front of this chair, on the chair, behind the chair, on the side of the chair, the distance that you take from that chair would determine how comfortable you are with that situation. Meaning, if that chair represents a conflict that you have with your mother, depending on your relationship with your mother, you might actually be just in front of the chair so that you're confronting the conflict with your mother. Or very often I would see in training rooms, the person would just go to the other side of the room. If that conflict is with my mom, I'm going to be running away from that chair. Meaning that I'm not going to address the issue with my mom because my relationship with my mom is either too important, accommodating, or not important and I don't care about the issue, so avoidance. Versus if I really care about my mom, my dad, or whoever person in that chair is, what I would be doing is I would be coming and sitting in the chair. And excuse my expression, this is what I call sitting with my shit. Like sitting with what's not going right, accepting responsibility, and discussing possible solution together. And not as, I thought about it and this is what we're going to be doing. Rather than, this is how I feel, this is what I perceive, and this might not be the way you perceive it. How do you perceive it? And have a genuine interest in finding a solution together. And so it's an interesting exercise that we can do together, or that you can do with your partner or with family member or colleague. Put a chair in the middle and ask different person to say, okay, if this is a conflict, where are you in terms of conflict? If that chair represent a family member, if that chair represent a colleague, if that chair represent the government, regardless of what the conflict is, where you are in front, behind, next to, on top of the chair would determine the approach that you will be using. And I repeat, the approaches are 5: collaboration, confrontation, avoidance, accommodation, and compromise. And depending on the importance of the relationship and the importance of the issue, we will determine the approach that we will use. This gives us actually such a freedom to understand that I'm not determined by my behavior. I'm the one who's determining it. I'm choosing, because I understand that this situation is an important issue for you and me. I'm choosing to avoid it. I'm choosing to confront it. I'm choosing to collaborate, etc., etc. That's where, for me, freedom and power lies in my choice of what approach I'm going to be using to move me out or in the conflict. Thank you.